What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Dylan Talks Tone. Today we are going to make some pickups. We're going to use the manual tone winder pickup winder. I really like this thing. We have the CNC one over here that does kind of everything by itself. But I use this one quite a bit, and I really like it a lot. There's a link to these guys in the description. I don't necessarily... It doesn't, just check them out. They're really cool because I have, this one here and this one. Well, actually, before we get started, we're going to make a humbucker all the way through from beginning to end. But let me just show you a couple of things about this that are kind of neat. All right, so this is a touchscreen deal. The little thing, new bobbin, manual mode. And then we can come in here and we can name it. We can set our winding speed. We can set our amount of turns, and it will turn from, let's say it's 5,000 or whatever, down to 0, and it will slow down and stop. We can choose our winding direction, counterclockwise or clockwise. Then during the run, you use this knob over here. That's your speedometer right there, or your gas pedal, and you can make that thing go from like 50 turns per minute all the way up to whatever the max speed is, or whatever you set the max speed. So you can set the max speed wherever you want, which is pretty cool. Once you get this done, you can save these to free spaces. So you can save your wind counts, you can save your all your preset stuff, which is pretty slick. And then the other thing that's kind of interesting on here, you can load your old ones, blah, blah, blah. Pickup calculator. So this is an interesting deal because you can go in here and actually use... you can kind of put in what parameters you know, and then it will help you to get to your turns, and etc. So this will help you kind of calculate where you want to be, what your wire diameter is, the filling factor, as in how full the bobbin is, core width, core length, are the ends rounded, are they square, to calculate stuff when you're kind of figuring stuff out ahead of time, which is pretty cool. There's a Gauss meter in here that you can use, and then I think, let's see, Iconic Pickups Wizard. So we can go in here and select Tele Pickups, 50s Tele Neck, and here is all of the specs for that. And you can look at all the stuff, and it kind of helps you to figure stuff out, which I really think is kind of cool. So there's some major ones in there. Anyway, this is the winder that we're going to use today, and we're going to go ahead and wind a couple of humbucker bobbins, and then we'll go over and we will assemble it into a humbucker. We'll wax pot it, and we'll just kind of show you how we make a humbucker around here. Now, as you go through this, something I want you to remember, there's a million different ways to do things. So I'm sure there will be, experts in the comments telling me I'm doing something wrong or whatever. But we made like 10,000 of these things, and this is how we do it. And we make them really durably. We make them to last a long time. And as we go through, I'll kind of show you why I do certain things the way we do it. We'll do a voiceover for it because it just makes it way easier. Anyway, so let's make a humbucker now. So what I'm doing here is basically just bunching up a bunch of wire, kind of a wad of it, and taping it to the bobbin. The reason I'm doing that is because once the bobbin is done being wound, this is going to be the start, and I'm going to need a little length of wire on there that I can grab onto and solder a lead wire on. So I just kind of bunch it up. Move the camera in a second here because obviously this is a stupid angle and you can't see a whole lot, but we're just attaching the bobbin to the platen there. What I really like about this winder is they're all engraved with, like, this is a 50 millimeter bobbin, so it's engraved. It tells you where to put it, and it threads right in there. And now we're just going to go ahead and give this thing a wind. Now as we go here, this is at higher speed, but we are choosing our scatter back and forth, and we are going at a particular rate that I like. We're winding at the RPM that I like, and we're winding at the tension that I like. Of course, this is by hand, so you're doing this by feel and by practice. And that's kind of the way it works. And that thing, you can't see it on there, but that display gives you a timer for how long is left to the end of the bobbin, how many winds have been wound, and everything. It's pretty stinking cool. And what I like about it is where you put your hand right there, just kind of as a natural spot for the angle up to the spindle. And now it's done. Take the bobbin off, and we go over to the assembly bench. All right, so now we've got wire leads that are sticking out from the bobbin. And what these are is just, the start and the finish wire. So I'm going to basically take wire, I'm going to wrap it around a piece of about an inch or inch and a half long wire that I've previously cut and stripped to length. As you do this, you can do it a bunch of different ways. A lot of people will do it where, they'll put a black wire on the start and a white wire on the finish or whatever. I actually do it to where it's hooked up the same as it is hooked up at the end of the pickup. I do this for serviceability purposes. You notice that there's tape around the bobbin first so that we don't have bare wire sitting against bare wire within the bobbin in case, vibration causes something to rub up against something and short out. And of course, when you're doing stuff on camera, you always get klutzier than is intentioned. But I like doing this because it's serviceable. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. I've seen people like solder the wire onto the bobbin itself and that sort of thing. Like they'll put a little copper piece of foil and then they'll solder the wire to it. I've seen them go down through the center of the bobbin like the old vintage style ones. All that stuff is cool, but I would rather it be serviceable. I'm not saying there's ever going to be a problem with the pickup, but if there is, then you can do something about it and you can repair it. So now we're doing the other coil wire. Same thing, just take your lead wire that's been stripped like that and just wrap it around there and hit it with some solder. Now we're using poly wire, polynylon insulated wire, and that makes it to where you don't have to worry about scraping off. Plain enamel doesn't solder through, so you actually have to sand it off or scrape it off with a razor blade. It's a pain in the butt. We could do a whole video on why I don't use plain enamel wire anymore. The vintage Luddites will not like the fact that we don't use plain enamel wire, but this is single build polynylon. It's going to get you the same sound, and it doesn't give you cancer like plain enamel wire does. Or at least the original stuff anyway. And it's not unobtainium. Plain enamel wire is not that inexpensive and would drive up the cost of a pickup fairly substantially these days, and we don't want to do that. Let's just watch myself fumble with this wire for a minute. Insert "I could do this better some other way" comment here because, yes, I agree. Whatever. It gets done. And I don't know what the concept of doing stuff on camera versus not doing stuff on camera is, but for some reason when you don't do it on camera, everything goes 100% smoothly and there's never an issue. And the minute the camera turns on, you're fumbling around like this looking like an idiot. I don't really know why. It's like Murphy's Law to it or something. Anyway, there you go. There is your bobbin with the wire taped onto it or soldered onto it. Now, what I typically do is pre-tin the other side of the wire with solder because this will give me an opportunity to solder to it a lot easier later. And then the other thing we'll do right away is we will check the coil with the meter. I do this at every step of the way through the process because we want to catch any issues before we go on to the next step. next step is going to be putting the Philister screws into the bobbin. So here we go, putting the Philister screws into the bobbin. You'll notice that I've got a piece of wood there. Chris from Texas Toast Guitars made me that on his cool little CNC machine. And the reason I had to make that for me is because you can now set the bobbin, you'll see it here in a minute, you can set the bobbin on top of that piece of wood. And after we find the lost screw, you will be able to screw these into the bobbin without hitting the table. Like so. Now, when you're doing this, be very careful for a couple reasons. One, you have to make sure, well, a couple ways. One, you have to make sure that you have the right size screwdriver to fit the Philister screw. The thing is usually that means that the blade of the screwdriver, the bit, is wider than the Philister screw, and if you go all the way down, you'll scratch the top of the bobbin. If it's too thin, it'll slip out and you will scratch the top of the bobbin with the screw gun, or you will put it through your finger. I have done both, neither of which is very pleasant at this point. So make sure that you get the right size screwdriver for it and make sure that it fits really well, and that you have good posture here. You just don't want to be fighting with it so that it goes easy like that. And then this is the keeper bar that goes on top. Typically, I have this square bladed screwdriver that I use because they fit really tight, which I want them to fit really tight. And so then that pushes down on there. And then we have the slugs go into the slug side. Sometimes I will put this on I have a little arbor press that I use to press stuff. But for simplicity of the video, I actually just did it with my thumbs. Which I probably should have done it with the press because this one was a little stiff. But usually you can just kind of push them in. Now when you do this, do it on something soft like that. I make sure that I keep my wood cleaned off there because I don't want anything to scratch the top of the bobbin or whatever if you're doing a plain black bobbin. These are going to have covers on them, but you still don't want to do damage to the parts, right, as you're building it. Details are details, so even if you can't see it, I want to make sure it's right. Okay, this is going to get braided vintage style wiring. I really like this stuff. I used to hate it. I absolutely used to hate it, but the more I use it, the more I like it. Push back the braid just a little bit. And this is a pre-tinned wire that we use. We actually sell this wire on our website, so if you need some, you can get some. And I just kind of pre-bend it, and then it goes into the base plate. And as it goes into the base plate, then we solder it to the base plate, and that will serve as our ground. And I'll show you how we ground it later as we solder things up. So I just kind of hold it on the edge right there. Gotta have a good soldering iron. We use the Heiko, what is that thing, 8666 or 8888 or whatever it is. Anyway, that's the one I use. And it goes quick, and it solders awesome. So now we take our bobbins and we put them on there. The other thing that happened is we magnetized the magnet, and then we place the magnet in there. We check the polarity to make sure the polarity is going correct. We do south side by the screw. And these are brass, non-magnetic screws to retain the bobbin to the base plate, because you don't want magnetic screws acting as another pull piece in your pickup. So that would suck. That would kind of mess everything up. So you want to make sure that these are not magnetic. So they are now number 2 by 3/8 or something. I can't remember. Brass screws. And that is what retains the bobbin on there. And it works awesome. let me insert, well, this is a redundancy. This is how we magnetize our magnets. We go over here to this machine and we put them between this machine, hit the button for a couple of seconds, and the magnet is magnetized to the correct gauge. And that's an Alnico 5 magnet, and then it's ready to go into the pickup. Sorry, I forgot to show that, so I'll just show that while we were screwing in a screw. More exciting than watching a screw go in. So now we've got all of the thing basically assembled, and now we need to wire it up. We need to solder up the wires. So on our pickups, the white is the ground. So you'll see there the white wire being soldered to the base plate, and that will serve as our ground for the pickup. And as you'll recall, the braid from the cable is also grounded to the base plate. So that's how we do that. Now our red wire is going to be our hot wire, and that's going to go to the center conductor on the braided base plate. Pretty simple. Or on the braided wire. Center conductor on the main wire. And then our black and green wires are our center link, and those are getting soldered together now. And then we tape them all up. Well, first, before we do anything, we check. Again, I check in between each step to make sure. We slide the cover on it after it's taped up. I just put tape around the outside. You've seen that before. And then we solder this. This is the other thing. You got to have a good soldering iron. The Hakko that I use senses that it's drawing a lot of heat out by, soldering on something heavier, bigger like this, like the cover and the base plate, and it will automatically pour more amperage to it to keep it hot, even though you're soldering something larger like this. So that's why it looks so effortless to solder these covers onto these humbuckers. It works awesome. I love my soldering iron. So we'll do that twice, obviously. We'll do that once on this side, and then we'll flip it around and do the other side. And it's all nice and neat and looks cool. But it's also serviceable. I don't like those kind of pickups where you've got like a solder joint that goes all the way down the side of the pickup, or in some weird spot that you can't get it out if for some reason you ever need to get in there. Yeah, it just makes more sense. I try to think all this stuff through when I design this stuff and build it, It's funny because people will get on me like, that's not how you're supposed to do it. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm trying to do it how I would do it if I needed something. You know what I mean? Like kind of problem solving and sort of thinking practically more than vintagely, if that makes sense. There you go. Rip the plastic off. Throw it in some hot wax. So this is paraffin wax heated to about 135 degrees, something like that. And this will sit in here. You can see bubbles coming out. Maybe not right this second, but I think they start coming out. Yep, there they go. And the way I gauge that, I kind of have my own method about how I do this. They're not vacuum potted. I have a whole video about why I don't like vacuum potting and why I don't like over potting a pickup. I just like to take the looseness and the squeal out of it, right? But I still like some motion in the coil. So I've done a bunch of experimenting. I've cut coils apart after wax potting them to see how far the wax goes in, and etc. I've played around with this for quite a long time, and this is how I like to do it. So you can see some bubbles coming out there. I'm not so necessarily concerned about all the bubbles, but what I really want is I want wax between the top of the cover, underneath the cover and the bobbins, in between there. I want bobbin in between the magnet and the base plate, and the bobbins and the base plate. So we just want to take all the hardware vibration out. Take it out, wipe it off, clean it up, and then we do a double check on it. And then as we are getting done, then we will go ahead and engrave our name on it. I actually hand engrave every pickup that we make. I do not use the laser for this. It's kind of my final quality control. It means that we have just checked the pickup right before we've put it into the package. So this is about to go in the package. It doesn't get my name on it until right before then, and that's kind of how we know. It's all quality checked. We put it in the package. We give you some screws and some springs, stainless steel quality stuff, and we put a diagram that you can scan and get all of the wiring diagrams to hook up your pickups. It goes in the package as well. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. Putting together a humbucker from start to finish. It's kind of how we do it around here. If you have any questions about, pickup building or any of the other stuff that we do at Dylan Talks Tone, let me know. You can go to Dylan Talks Tone and you can buy this stuff. Humbuckers, single coils, P90s, wire, a bunch of parts. If you want to make your own pickups, we sell a bunch of parts for that too, so it's pretty cool. Check it out. And thanks for hanging out. Please do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and the like button. We're getting real close to 100,000 subscribers. Maybe the day this video comes out. It actually might happen. Anyway, we will see you soon, and have a good one.